The investigation into a missing AR-15 from the MTSU Police Department's locker room led to an elaborate undercover operation involving Officer Marco Burke. Despite being relatively new to the department, Burke found himself in the center of a felony theft accusation, with his own body camera footage playing a crucial role. The sting was prompted by Burke's suspicious behavior the night the AR-15 was stolen, marked by his multiple entries into the locker room. Responding to a staged scene of a reckless driver's crash, Burke was recorded rummaging through a bait car, extracting $1,100 and 2 bottles of OxyContin pills. Detective David Harrison, overseeing the operation, testified.
Next, he took the currency. Then he went through the backpack and took the second bottle of OxyContin.
Next, he took the currency. Then he went through the backpack and took the second bottle of OxyContin. Murfreesboro police did plant real cash in the bait car, but the pill bottles were made to look like they contained OxyContin, but were sugar pills. The following day, officers discovered a lunchbox with the money and pills near a bush by Burke's car in the parking lot. Delving into Burke's background, detectives discovered his financial struggles, including recent bankruptcy filings.
And here, back in his squad car, you can hear Burke shuffling papers, possibly counting the money he's just taken.
From a live feed video that we had.
We were watching it from a live feed video we had, Detective Harrison stated, closely monitoring Burke's actions. Despite evidence to the contrary, Burke initially denied finding any money or pills in the vehicle, and these items weren't mentioned in his report.
If the vehicle is unoccupied, that's it.
Assistant DA Eric Farmer highlighted this in court, asking Harrison if Burke reported taking the things, to which Harrison replied, "No, sir." In a jailhouse call to his wife, a remorseful Burke admitted, "I got in trouble. I wasn't even sorry, even though I was mad as at myself for what I did."
I got caught up in something, and I got in trouble. I know what I did. They did a sting.
While Burke wasn't charged with stealing the AR-15 or drug offenses, his attorney raised concerns about the legality of the sting's location and the amount of money used, suggesting potential enhancements to any drug-related charges due to the proximity to a school. Burke was indicted 1 month later, in June 2018, on 5 felony charges. Burke ended up pleading guilty to 3 felonies and at trial was convicted of tampering with evidence. He faces 3 to 15 years in prison at sentencing. In September 2017, the quiet community of Winter Park, Florida, was shaken by the disappearance of Jennifer Fulford, a dedicated personal assistant and nanny. A few days into her mysterious absence, the worst fears were confirmed when her body was found in a secluded wooded area. The subsequent investigation painted a harrowing picture. Jennifer had been abducted, brutally stabbed multiple times, bound, and ultimately suffocated. The prime suspect, Scott Nelson, was no stranger to the criminal justice system. He had a sprawling criminal record and had spent a considerable chunk of his life behind bars. Remarkably, after his release from probation, his interactions with the prison system and his probation officer became central themes during his trial.
They turned me into an animal. I've been beaten. I've been chained to beds for days that are ripped. I've been locked in cells that are so stifling hot. I have flashbacks to this very day. I've had cockroaches running over my body. I've been beaten. I've been raped. I've been everything in prison.
In a chilling turn of events, Nelson didn't just confess to the crime. He provided a graphic, detailed account of the entire ordeal, from abduction to the merciless killing, all without a hint of remorse. His cold recounting sent shivers down the spines of those in the courtroom.
Well, sir, I'll be very frank with you. Jennifer Lynn Fulford would be alive today had it not been for Julio Dominguez.
Mr. Dominguez was a federal probation officer?
That's correct.
Okay. And Mr. Dominguez, according to your statement, is the individual responsible for Jennifer Fulford's death?
Yes.
Did Mr. Dominguez kill Jennifer Fulford?
No.
Who killed Jennifer Fulford?
I did.
All right.
Throughout the trial, Nelson's erratic behavior was on full display. He used the proceedings as a soapbox, airing grievances about his past treatment in prison and by his probation officer. He even went as far as suggesting that his perceived injustices drove him to target Fulford, implying she was a pawn in his vendetta against his probation officer.
You're saying that Jennifer Fulford was collateral damage as a result of your disliking Mr. Dominguez and how he treated you.
Well, I believe it's more, yes, but it's more accurate that he had a problem with me rather than I having a problem with him.
This attempt to deflect blame was met with disbelief and anger. While Nelson's defense acknowledged his role in the crime, especially given his detailed confession, they pivoted their strategy towards his mental health and the external factors that might have pushed him to commit such a heinous act.
Mr. Nelson, do you want to be sentenced to death?
Yes.
The jury's verdict was almost a foregone conclusion.
We, the jury, find the defendant guilty of robbery with a deadly weapon as charged in the indictment. Subsequently, all dated at Orlando, Orange County, Florida.
Guilty on all counts, including first-degree murder and kidnapping. The gravity of his actions and the threat he posed led the judge to sentence Nelson to life without the possibility of parole. In San Diego, a disturbing case unfolded involving Jalen Devin Fleer, a 27-year-old San Diego County Sheriff's Department deputy. Known for his role in the jail and court services unit, Fleer's facade of upholding the law crumbled when an investigation exposed his heinous acts. He was arrested for engaging in sexual offenses with minors, a revelation that sent shockwaves through the community. His transgressions were severe, including engaging in sex acts with a 14-year-old, among other minors.
I have never seen a more despicable set of facts as I've seen in this case.
The detail he goes into with regard to his sex exploits that he is trying to engage in with young children are just despicable.
The prosecutor read out letters from the victims and victims' family. Fleer faced the judicial system he once served, pleading guilty to 20 felony and misdemeanor charges that painted a picture of betrayal and abuse of power. The 27-year-old's attorney asked the judge for leniency, but the judge had a different take on it and handed down a 12-year prison sentence composed of an upper term for the principal count, middle terms for 8 counts to run consecutively, and upper terms for 9 others, either concurrently served or stayed. This case not only shed light on the dark underbelly of abusive authority, but also highlighted the vulnerability of minors and the paramount importance of their protection. As the community grappled with the breach of trust by one of its law enforcers, Fleer's story was a grim reminder of the vigilance needed against those who misuse their power. Luis Bracamontes is a Mexican cop killer whose chilling courtroom behavior has left many in shock. On October 24, 2014, Sacramento County Sheriff's Deputy Danny Oliver and Placer County Sheriff's Detective Michael Davis Jr. were killed in a day-long shooting rampage. Bracamontes and his wife, Janelle Monroy, were involved in this series of events that began in a Motel 6 parking lot in Sacramento and ended in Auburn, California. In footage from his trial, Bracamonte exhibited chilling behavior. He frequently smiled, laughed, and even admitted to the killings, showing no remorse. Bracamonte is seen smiling incessantly, even as he faces charges for the murder of 2 Northern California sheriff's deputies. His remorseless demeanor is evident as he expresses regret for not having killed more officers. His defense attorneys argued that Bracamontes had a mental illness and was high on methamphetamine during the shootings, which made him act impulsively. However, the prosecution argued that Bracamontes had planned the attacks and even wore body armor during the shooting spree. His wife, Janelle Monroy, was also on trial for her role in the events of that day. While she claimed she was a victim of her husband's violent tendencies and was forced to participate, the prosecution argued that she willingly assisted Bracamontes. The drama in the courtroom was palpable from the very beginning. On his first day of trial, Bracamontes brazenly yelled out, admitting his crimes and declaring the trial a waste of time.
Ladies and gentlemen, please step out of the hallway.
The prosecution detailed the gruesome nature of the murders, including scenes of bloodshed and cries of,
"And there's blood everywhere. He's been hit." And he yells, "I'm hit, I'm hit, I'm hit."
Bracamontes disturbingly chuckled to himself. In a previous trial where cameras were not permitted, reporters noted his relaxed attitude. He appeared easygoing and even greeted the gallery with a casual, "Hey, how are you guys doing today?" He showed no remorse to the victims' families in court. In a shocking turn of events, he had an outburst, stating with a smile,
"I will break out soon and I will kill more."
Luis Bracamontes was found guilty of the murders of the two deputies.
We, the jury, find that the defendant, Luis Enriquez Monroy Bracamontes, committed multiple murders within the meaning of Penal Code Section 190.2 sub A sub 3 to be true. Dated February 9, 2018, signed four-person jury number 7.
And was sentenced to death in 2018. Janelle Monroy was sentenced to 24 years and 10 months on various counts to be served before a 25-year to life sentence in the murder of Placer Sheriff's Detective Michael Davis Jr.
Case number 14F07390, Department 21, verdict count 1.
The case was politically charged and was cited in debates about U.S. immigration policy, as Bracamontes was in the country illegally at the time of the murders. John and Catherine Snyder. John and Catherine Snyder were found guilty of the unimaginable, abusing their children, including 5 adopted from China. The worst part? It ended in the tragic death of 8-year-old Adam Snyder. What I find utterly chilling is that Adam was one of the 5 children the Snyders had adopted, all with learning disabilities. It's heartbreaking, right? But the horror doesn't stop there. The couple faced a whopping 26 charges. They were found guilty of murder, felonious assault, and endangering children. Assistant Prosecutor Stacy Lefton, speaking at their trial, described the unimaginable punishments these kids endured. Cold baths as punishment? Smearing feces on them? It's beyond comprehension. The things these children survived will make your stomach turn. And get this, parents didn't feed Adam for over a month. He wasn't given food from September 1st to October 5th, 2016. Can you fathom the cruelty? Adam's heartbreaking demise came from blunt force trauma to the head. Can you imagine the horror of that moment for him, for everyone involved? But here's the shocking part. The Snyders dared to sue the coroner who ruled Adam's death as a homicide. What goes on in someone's mind to take such actions? Now here's where it gets even more alarming. The couple wasn't arrested right after Adam's death. They moved to New York, but justice caught up with them in 2022, when they were finally brought back to Ohio for trial. John Snyder got 29 years to life, and Catherine Snyder got 31 years to life. However, they remained remorseful and nonchalant. But the scars left on those kids, on that community, will last a lifetime.
They wanted to pretend that they loved these children, but after Adam had passed away, they were like, John was like, we didn't care, no one liked him anyway. I mean, that's hard, that's cold. So this sentence was appropriate given their real feelings, not what they wanted everyone to see. All those people that they had write letters, they saw what they wanted them to see. We saw what was really going on.
Derek Chauvin, a former Minneapolis police officer, became globally infamous for his involvement in the George Floyd case. This incident, which occurred during an arrest, was notably marked by Chauvin kneeling on Floyd's neck for over 9 minutes. The act, captured on camera, ignited international protests against police brutality and racial injustice. Chauvin joined the Minneapolis Police Department, MPD, in 2001. During his tenure, he was involved in 3 police shootings, one of which was fatal in 2017. Chauvin was the subject of at least 17 misconduct complaints throughout his career, but only 2 led to disciplinary action. The encounter with George Floyd began when Chauvin and 3 other officers responded to a report of a man using counterfeit money at a convenience store. They found the 46-year-old Floyd in a parked car nearby. Police officers approached the vehicle. Mr. Lane, one of the officers, taps his flashlight on the window and asks Mr. Floyd to show his hands. 6 seconds after the door opens, Mr. Lane draws his gun, points it at Mr. Floyd and says, "Put your expletive hands up right now." Without explaining the reason for the stop, he pulls Mr. Floyd out of the car. After removing Mr. Floyd from the vehicle, Mr. Lane and Mr. Quang handcuffed him and walked him across the street to their squad car. 3 officers pin Mr. Floyd face down, while Mr. Chauvin kneels on his neck. Mr. Quang kneels on his upper legs and holds his wrist, and Mr. Lane holds Mr. Floyd's legs. Mr. Thao was keeping bystanders away. The bystander footage showed Chauvin no emotion as he knelt on Floyd's neck and back. Floyd, who was handcuffed and lying face down on the pavement, remained under Chauvin's knee for 9 minutes and 29 seconds. George Floyd gasped for air and repeatedly exclaimed, "I can't breathe."
I can't breathe, officer. Shut up. They will kill me. They will kill me, man.
Until he ultimately went silent. Following the trial, Chauvin was found guilty on all counts and sentenced to 22.5 years, exceeding the standard sentencing guideline for second-degree murder with credit for time already served.
Mr. Chauvin, as to count 1, based on the verdict of the jury, finding you guilty of unintentional second-degree murder while committing a felony under Minnesota Statute 609.19 subdivision 2, paren 1, it is the judgment of the court that you now stand convicted of that offense. Pursuant to Minnesota Statute section 609.04, counts 2 and 3 will remain unadjudicated as they are lesser offenses of count 1. Commissioner of Corrections, for a period of 270 months. That's 270. That is a 10-year addition to the presumptive sentence of 150 months. This is based on your abuse of a position of trust and authority, and also the particular cruelty shown to George Floyd. You are granted credit for 199 days already served. Pay the mandatory surcharge of $78 to be paid from prison wages. You are prohibited from possessing firearms, ammunition, or explosives for the remainder of your life.
He also faced federal charges for violating Floyd's civil rights. After sentencing, Chauvin maintained a stern demeanor, briefly expressing sympathy to Floyd's family, but showing no remorse for his actions. He appealed against his conviction, alleging jury prejudice and an unfair trial. Chauvin's conviction marked the first time a white police officer in Minnesota was found guilty of murdering a black person. The other 3 officers, Tu Thao and J. Alexander Quang, were charged for not intervening in Chauvin's excessive use of force, according to the indictment. Along with Chauvin and the 4th officer, Thomas Lane, they were all charged with neglecting to provide Floyd with medical assistance. Additionally, Thao, Quang, and Lane face state charges of aiding and abetting second-degree murder and aiding and abetting second-degree manslaughter. The sentence sparked diverse reactions. Some argued that the punishment was too lenient and that Chauvin deserved a harsher sentence. Others viewed it as a significant message reaffirming that police officers are not above the law. An 18-year-old from Tampa faced a highly charged courtroom as he was sentenced to 15 years in prison after his conviction for planning a mass attack on Freedom High School back in August 2011. The verdict sparked intense emotional reactions, particularly from Kano's family. As a result, his younger sister Alexandra had to be forcefully removed because of her overwhelming distress. The case revolved around contrasting narratives. The prosecutors painted Kano as a threat, intent on executing a deadly assault on his former school. On the other hand, the defense portrayed him as a mentally distressed teen with anger issues whose plans were more fantastical than real. When arrested, bomb-making materials were discovered in Kano's home, intensifying the perceived threat level. However, his defense attorney, Norman Cannella, argued that none of the materials were operational and emphasized Kano's recent personal achievements, like earning his GED while in jail.
Match heads, bobby pins, salt, none of it could explode.
Kano's mother, Michelle Butler Kano, presented a heartfelt plea to the court, shedding light on her son's turbulent upbringing, marred by verbal and physical abuse from his father. She urged the judge to recognize Cano's potential for reform with proper medication and therapy. A significant point of contention was a 13-minute video Cano had created on his cell phone detailing his violent plans against specific individuals at the school. The video was replete with profanities and violent threats. As the video was played in the courtroom, Cano sat visibly disturbed, avoiding the footage. Ricky Hand was on parole when he tried to rob a John's drive-thru shop in Springfield, Ohio. The shop's owner was closing for the night when he noticed an armed man approaching from behind. He picked up his gun and shot the invader.
No! Shit the hell!
Afterward, he called 911 to report what had happened to him.
911 emergency. Yeah, this is John's drive-thru, West Main Street. A guy just tried to rob me and I shot him. He ran out the back door. Okay, is he injured? I think I hit him.
The alleged robber was later identified as Ricky Hand. While in court, the 46-year-old Springfield resident faced the Clark County courtroom for sentencing over a series of armed robberies. However, whispers of his intent to disrupt the proceedings with a shocking act circulated. Without a security check, he was allowed entry, secretly carrying bottles filled with feces and urine. In an emotional outburst over his 40-year sentence, the court was in shambles within seconds of the outburst. This oversight became evident when Hand threw the concealed feces, exclaiming,
"You just give me 40 years, sir?" "Yes." "You just gave me 40 years. Well, guess what? Sir, what's this?"
Hand said, and reached for something in a sling before due to a previous injury. He pulled out the feces and threw it, hitting his lawyer and 4 deputies. He was then tackled by the 4 deputies in the court and told them he had multiple bottles of feces hidden on his body. A day later, Ricky found himself back in court facing fresh charges. These included harassment with bodily substances directed at his attorney and 4 deputies, obstructing official business, and retaliation. The court added a bond of $30,000 to his case. Hand expressed remorse to the judge during the hearing, admitting, "I'm sorry for being a criminal." He confirmed that the bodily fluids he used were indeed his own feces and urine. Previously, Hand had cooperated with the police, admitting to some of his crimes, which included aggravated robbery. Detective Ron Jordan from the Springfield Police Division remembered Hand's eagerness to confess. He wanted to come clean. While some of his robberies involved weapons, one gun was later found to be fake.
I did try to rob John's drive-thru. Got shot 3 times. I did the crime, I ain't gonna lie. I just wanted to let you know.
So, John, what'd you do with the pistol that you had in there? Because you know, it's my understanding when you run in there, you started pulling out and the guy saw you.
Right, but I didn't even get it out.
You were going for it, though, right?
But I didn't even get it out. He shot me regardless.
Well, I think he's well aware that you've been robbing places at gunpoint or so.
I've never robbed anybody. That's the first one I've ever done.
Now, hang on a second. Now, you and I have been straight with each other every time we met each other, okay?
Yeah.
I know there's more to it than that.
I pulled it out. Okay. Pulled the weapon out. But I don't think I got it all the way out.
Well, he saw you. That's why he shot you.
Still, the threat felt genuine to his victims, Cian Hedges and Jack Benham. In late November 2020, police arrested Cian Hedges over the horrific killing of her son, Alfie Phillips. The mother and her ex-boyfriend were found guilty of murdering the 18-month-old. After a wicked and painful attack, in which he was beaten to death and suffocated by the nasty couple, Alfie had more than 70 injuries to his body. Hedges and Jack Benham, 35, carried out a night of severe punishment after calling Alfie whingy and upset while high on cocaine, whiskey, and cannabis into the early hours of the morning. Can you believe this atrocity? The toddler died with a myriad of bruises, broken ribs, arms, and leg, and also had traces of cocaine and alcohol in his system after the brutal attack, which took place in Benham's caravan in Hernhill, near Faversham, Kent. Hedges sat in the back of a police car clutching a bottle of Coke and in disbelief as an officer explained that some of Alfie's injuries couldn't be accounted for, to which Hedges brashly replied, "What do you mean?" The officer explained that bruising to the toddler's eye, a deformation to one of his wrists, and a potentially old fracture on one of his arms that came up in an X-ray would require further explanation. As the officer officially announced his arrest of Hedges, she was stunned and began to plead.
But it may harm your defence. Did not mention one question. Some electronic court, and if you could do so, you may be given evidence. Okay. There's some injuries on Alfie which can't be accounted for.
What do you mean?
Okay, so the bruising to his eye. Okay, there's a deformation with one of the wrists. And the hospital have also told us from an X-ray. Just wait a moment. Okay, that there's potentially an old fracture to one of the arms as well, which may have required some sort of hospital treatment at the time, but they can't find any records to show that it has been taken. Okay, that's what we've been told at the moment in time.
When Benham was also arrested, he was shocked and threw his girlfriend under the bus as he asked if Cian had also been arrested. Following a 9-week trial at Maidstone Crown Court, Cian Hedges, 27, and Jack Benham, 35, have been found guilty of his murder. The judge indicated they both face life sentences. Jurors took about 10 hours to reach a unanimous verdict. Detective Chief Inspector Kath Way of Kent Police said, "Today's verdict will not bring Alfie back, but it does mean that Hedges and Benham lose their right to freedom and life as they know it. Alfie should have been protected and loved by his mom. Instead, Hedges and Benham inflicted unimaginable suffering on him during a sustained and lengthy night of violence." She added, "Alfie would now be 4 and have recently started school. Instead, his life was cruelly taken away by those he should have been able to trust the most," she said. The two did not appear remorseful as they continued to claim that they had done nothing to the poor child, while the rest of Alfie's family, especially his father, continued to mourn for him.
Sian Hedges, Alfie's own mother, who should have been there to keep him safe and to protect him, along with her boyfriend, Jack Benham, have caused such unimaginable pain and suffering to Alfie. They subjected him to so much violence.
Next, we take you to the County Superior Court in Fresno, California, for the sentencing of Curtis Travis, 35, who was found guilty on charges of murder, robbery, auto theft, and hit and run. 2 years before this verdict, he and Stephen Stowers, 24, burglarized a family's residence, stealing a laptop, money, and pickup truck keys. In their escape, they ran red lights, ultimately colliding with another car, killing its driver, Heliodoro Revolcaba. The individuals involved fled, but were eventually caught after a few weeks. Blood evidence revealed that Travis was driving the stolen vehicle during the accident. Both men faced charges regarding Heliodoro's death and pled not guilty. Stowers was convicted of robbery and theft, but his murder trial concluded with a hung jury. However, Travis was declared guilty of first-degree felony murder and was convicted on all accounts. At the sentencing, presided over by Judge Kent Hamlin, Travis and Stowers awaited their judgment. Travis had a black eye from a recent altercation with a jail officer. The courtroom was filled with emotion as Heliodoro's family was present. "Your Honor, I have something to tell you before we even start," Curtis Travis said. "I plead incompetent insanity. I'm pleading insanity, mother," he screamed. "You do not control these proceedings," the judge responded. Yelled Travis. "Them. It's bullshit. Sending me for life for something I didn't do." His niece delivered an emotive victim impact statement describing the significant loss they faced due to the recklessness of the two men.
A very important life was taken. And I just hope that you guys learn from this experience, because that's what my uncle would want.
As Travis was visibly distraught, the court allowed his mother to present a statement expressing her remorse for the tragic events.
He didn't go out and take a gun and shoot somebody. I mean, it wasn't like he did it on purpose. I just apologize, and I'm sorry for everything. That's all I can say.
In his closing statement, Travis disrupted the court as the proceedings advanced, contesting the blood evidence and even addressing Heliodoro's grieving family with disdain.
The blood showed that I was in the passenger seat. Do you understand that?
I understand.
Evidence!
I understand your argument, sir.
Yeah. Just like the family over there, they're happy. That's not what your brother or whoever he was, he didn't want me to life.
His outbursts required the intervention of multiple deputies.
That's not what your brother or whoever he was, he didn't want me to life.
Judge Hamlin underscored the severity and consequences of such actions, emphasizing that the unintended nature of an accident does not lessen the pain caused to the victims or the seriousness of the crime. He hoped this case might deter others from making similar poor choices. He concluded by sentencing Travis to life in prison without the possibility of parole.
To invade someone's home, and you then selfishly put others at risk in your flight from the scene, and someone dies, the fact that it's an accident doesn't change how dead Mr. Rubalcaba is, or how much it hurt his family. Punishment for that crime is and should be life without the possibility of parole. And I would hope that if one young man makes a better choice to change their life before they find themselves where Mr. Travis is today, then Mr. Rubalcaba's life would not be as lost in vain. I gotta have that hope. We all do. Because otherwise, this is just a tragedy. To know it.
Stowers received a prison term of 6 years and 8 months for his crimes. Given Travis's extensive criminal past, the prosecutors recommended a life sentence. Jacob Matthew Morgan, a 17-year-old autistic teen from Rock Hill, South Carolina, was visibly distraught in court as he received a 15-year sentence for the death of his 14-month-old half-brother, Joshua Hill. Morgan admitted guilt for causing the fire in March 2015 that resulted in the tragic death. Though he hasn't confessed to intentionally starting the blaze, he has accepted his punishment due to a plea deal that dismissed a potential murder charge. The young man's family, especially his mother, Julie Hill Dover, firmly believes in his innocence. She argues that the police manipulated her autistic son into making a confession. The prosecution painted a contrasting picture, suggesting that Morgan stood by watching his home burn without attempting to save his brother or seek help. However, the teen's parents refute this claim, suggesting neighbors prevented him from intervening. The tables were flipped unexpectedly inside the Frank Murphy Hall of Justice. Instead of the usual defendant meltdown, Judge Vonda Evans was caught in a whirlwind of emotions thanks to one Anthony Thornton. Thornton, on trial for rape, chose a bench trial, a choice that would see him face the candid and outspoken Judge Evans head-on. Thornton interrupted as she attempted to deliver her verdict, passionately declaring that the encounter had been consensual. In a rare moment of vulnerability, their fiery exchange reached a boiling point, with Judge Evans resorting to strong language to reprimand Thornton for his interruptions.
When you tell one lie, you gotta remember the 100 lies that you told to cover that lie up.
That wasn't no lie.
Be quiet and don't talk in my courtroom!
She ordered him out but pressed on with the verdict, convicting him of 2 counts of criminal sexual conduct, but acquitting him of kidnapping and unlawful imprisonment.
Be quiet! Take him back! Take him out! Take him out now!
When he was brought back in, Thornton, perhaps realizing the gravity of his actions, tried to make amends with a series of apologies. Judge Evans, however, wasn't having it. She firmly chastised him for his lack of decorum.
You were out of line?
Yes, I was, and I'm sorry. All I've been saying is how things are.
I'm saying what you said to this court!
And I apologize deeply because you've been treating me fair.
I have never been anything but respectful to you. And for you to say me in my courtroom was unacceptable.
Yes, I'm deeply sorry. Just upset because I didn't do it. I'm deeply sorry.
Take it back.
All this courtroom drama might make one forget the gravity of the charges against Thornton. A crucial piece of DNA evidence, which Thornton himself had consented to, tied him to several rape cases in Detroit spanning 7 years. This DNA link and the subsequent rape kits were instrumental in his prosecution. Judge Vonda Evans sternly addressed Anthony Dorian Thornton, declaring, "Today you will pay for the assault." She then sentenced him to 15 to 30 years for each count of first-degree criminal sexual conduct and an additional 15 to 30 years for unlawful imprisonment. Although Thornton was found guilty on 2 counts of criminal sexual conduct, the sentences will be served simultaneously. This day at court was an emotional roller coaster. In their moments of high emotion, both the judge and defendant showed us the raw, human side of the justice system. Randall Moore's heinous crimes and subsequent trial sent shockwaves through the courtroom. The judge, visibly disturbed by Moore's actions, remarked,
"You give a new meaning to the word evil. I've never, ever seen anybody like you."
Moore had not only kidnapped, sexually assaulted, and killed his former wife, Therese Ann Lynch, but also critically injured Officer Todd Rowland, who responded to distress calls from the scene. A haunting radio transmission captured the dire situation.
303 Adam's been hit, officer down. He has 20 shells. He wants no one to come to the door.
Moore's motive, as revealed in a chilling call to a 911 dispatcher, was his desperation to see his 7-month-old son after Lynch had left him and filed a protective order. The prosecuting attorney painted a vivid picture of Moore's brutality, describing how he violently forced Lynch into his car.
He said, get in my car. And when she refused to get inside the car with him, he grabbed her like a piece of luggage and he threw her face.
Argumentative.
Threw her face first in the back seat of the car.
As the verdict was read, Moore's chilling indifference was evident in his slight nod. Lynch's mother, during the sentencing, read from her daughter's journal, highlighting her fear and disdain for Moore.
What you did to my daughter, Therese Ann Marie Lynch, was evil, hateful, and despicable. You are now dead and rotting and repulsive to me.
Despite the overwhelming evidence and emotional testimonies, Moore remained defiant, expressing no remorse and placing blame on his wife for keeping him from their son.
Read the journal she wrote. She hated you. She hated you. You're a loser. And I'll tell you point blank, I have not 1 ounce of remorse for Therese Ann's death.
The court doesn't allow me to punish you any more than I'm doing now. If I could, I would.
The judge, repulsed by Moore's lack of remorse, sentenced him to 3 life terms. Meet Alan McCarty, who spewed so many profanities in court that the judge even threatened to shut his mouth with duct tape.
What a bunch of guys, you stupid piece of You threatened my life, you
Alan McCarty Jr., who threatened a judge's life, received a 20-year sentence. An added 10-day sentence was attributed to an inappropriate proposal McCarty made to Judge Foxman, which Foxman declined. At first, he completely ignored Judge Matt Foxman like he never existed. Afterward, McCarty began to rant and rant until the judge became so frustrated. Because he won't stop yelling, Judge Foxman ordered McCarty to be taken to a small room with glass behind the courtroom, where he later spent the rest of his proceedings. As deputies dragged him away, McCarty continued screaming expletives at the judge and other members of the court. Despite being in the small room, McCarty never stopped screaming. He was screaming so loud that his shouts were enough to be heard in the courtroom. The jury, comprising 3 men and 3 women, took roughly 30 minutes to pronounce McCarty guilty of 2 counts of threats, extortion, and corruption by threat against a public servant. In addition to threatening the judge, McCarty made threatening calls to 2 dispatchers, and he also faces more charges, since he's also accused of calling Stuart Marchman Act behavioral health care and threatening staffers there. Taylor Shabuznes, a 25-year-old defendant, was previously charged with the killing and beheading her boyfriend Shad Therian during a meth-induced event last year in February 2022, where she was also taken into custody. On February 14, 2023, Shabuznes was initially seen sitting calmly in a Green Bay courtroom. However, following the judge's suggestion to postpone the trial date, she became visibly agitated. In reaction to the proposed delay, please pay attention to how she violently lunged at her then lawyer, striking him on the head with her handcuffed arms and elbow. Moments after the incident, a Brown County Sheriff's officer subdued Shabuznes, struggling to restrain her as she tried to break free. Shabuznes was convicted in July 2023 by a Brown County jury that took only 50 minutes to find her guilty of first-degree intentional homicide, third-degree sexual assault, and mutilating a corpse. She had pleaded not guilty because of mental disease or defect. The next day, The jury rejected her plea that she had a mental illness when she killed Therian. She appeared in court wearing a spit hood. I guess officers would not take any chances with her again. Shabuznes received a life sentence without the possibility of parole for the February 2022 killing of Therian. Additionally, she was given 7.5 years for the mutilation of a body and another 3 years for third-degree sexual assault. At just 17, Michael Swanson embarked on a chilling killing spree in Iowa, taking the lives of 2 gas station attendants within a mere hour. His first heinous act occurred in Elgano, where, donning a ski mask and armed with a handgun, he demanded cash and cigarettes from Vicky Bowman Hall. Even though she complied, he coldly shot and killed her. Not long after, in Humboldt, he repeated this grim act, murdering Sheila Myers. Authorities apprehended him 60 miles away after identifying his vehicle. Disturbingly, both victims had met his demands, indicating that robbery wasn't his primary intent, but rather murder. During his trial, Swanson's chilling indifference was palpable. When the judge read out his sentence, highlighting the grim future awaiting him, Swanson's response was a mere smirk and laugh, expressing no remorse. His cold amusement persisted even when confronted by the victims' families, who challenged his motives.
I want to know if you're even sorry. Are you sorry for what you did? My mom was not only completely 100% innocent, but she was also a defenseless woman when you came in with that gun. You said you did it for cigarettes and money and so no one could identify you, but I think that's a lie.
They pointed out that he had previously confessed to killing for the sheer feeling of power, not just for money or anonymity. Some even described him as heartless and soulless.
Where did you shoot? On the body? Yeah. In the face. In the face? Okay. Right in the face. If I was just gonna shoot to injure her, why would I shoot her in the heart?
Swanson's family was notably absent, offering no defense or comments on his actions. As the trial concluded, Swanson was labeled dangerous and unpredictable by the judge and was sentenced to 2 life terms. However, his violent streak didn't end there. 4 years into his sentence, he brutally killed a fellow inmate, adding another 25 years to his already lengthy sentence.
I am truly sorry for the harm and devastation he has caused them. We let them down, and we failed to identify a man in the ranks of the Metropolitan Police Service who carried out the most awful offences. He should not have been a police officer.
David Carrick's story is sobering about how trust in law enforcement can be catastrophically betrayed. Born in January 1975, Carrick began his policing career with the Metropolitan Police in 2001, joining the Parliamentary and Diplomatic Protection Team in 2009. This position, unfortunately, provided cover for his sinister deeds. In October 2021, a woman bravely came forward with rape allegations against Carrick, setting off an investigation that unearthed nearly 2 decades of hidden abuse. Alarmingly, as early as 2002, the Metropolitan Police had received several domestic abuse complaints against him, yet he was still recertified as an armed officer in 2017. Known among his collaborators as Bastard Dave for his cruelty, Carrick exploited his police badge to gain trust and authority, which he used to manipulate and abuse multiple women from 2003 to 2020. He used dating platforms like Tinder and Badoo to find victims, extending his predatory behavior beyond Hertfordshire. His abuse was both physical and psychological, controlling every aspect of his victims' lives, right down to what they wore and ate. Among his victims was Michelle, a colleague and serving Metropolitan Police officer, described Carrick as both charming and egotistical. Despite witnessing his inappropriate conduct, such as slapping another female officer's backside, she felt powerless to report him, fearing career repercussions within the Metropolitan Police's dismissive culture.
I'm paid to protect people. Maybe if I had reported, he would have been slung out the job.
She recounted a traumatic experience of being sexually assaulted by Carrick, an event that profoundly affected her life.
But the culture didn't allow me. Totally regret it now, but at the time, I would have been labelled as the woman that alleges rape. No one's going to go through their whole 30-year career with that.
Carrick initially pleaded not guilty to all charges. Still, in December 2022, at the Old Bailey Criminal Court in London, he admitted guilt to all 49, including 24 counts of sexual assault involving 12 female victims.
David Carrick, I have to sentence you for 49 offences on 2 indictments committed over 17 years while you were a serving police officer.
On February 7, 2023, he received 36 life sentences with a minimum term of 30 years plus 239 days, ensuring his imprisonment until at least 2052, marking him as one of Britain's most notorious sex offenders. The repercussions of Carrick's actions extended beyond his sentencing. They prompted introspection within the Metropolitan Police, leading to a review of approximately 1,000 of its 45,000 employees for similar offenses. 6 victims sued the Metropolitan Police for failing to investigate appropriately, alleging human rights breaches. Further inquiries by the Independent Office for Police Conduct into handling complaints against Carrick by the Metropolitan Police and the Wiltshire Police resulted in a dozen serving and former officers being investigated for potential misconduct related to Carrick's case by October 2023. Meet Frenesia Torres. She has been charged with Nicholas Evans and 18-year-old Khalil Miller in connection to the recent murder of 21-year-old William Tunchez near Suwannee. Before this, they had already been in custody for several armed robberies in Suwannee. Sergeant Jake Smith mentioned that their involvement in the robberies led authorities to suspect their role in Tunchez's murder. A tip-off about one of the suspects paved the way to identifying the other 2. All 3 were found to be present at the murder scene. Children discovered Tunchez's body on a trail in Northcliffe Drive, Suwannee. His vehicle was found a short distance away from his body. Interestingly, one of the suspects lived in the same area. A day before his body was found, Tunchez's father had reported him missing. Sergeant Smith believes that the crime was motivated by robbery, drawing parallels to the Suwannee armed robberies. He added, "While there's no indication that the suspects and the victim were acquainted, we suspect it was a planned robbery. Some form of interaction likely occurred between one of the suspects and the victim before the crime." Currently, the 3 teenagers face charges of felony murder, armed robbery, and additional charges related to the Suwannee robberies. Frenesia remained silent, likely believing her charges would be less since she didn't physically harm William. She was visibly shocked when charged with armed robbery and felony murder.
You have 3 warrants for armed robbery and 1 warrant for felony.
Khalil also seemed confused by the charges, while Nicholas was expressionless. A beautiful memorial service was held for William by his church community. Keith Ferguson of Kalkaska, Michigan, faced 12 felony counts, including kidnapping and murder. At 40 years old, during a heated divorce argument with his wife, Tiffany Ferguson, he violently assaulted her before fatally shooting her in the presence of their 4 children. In a horrifying sequence of events, Ferguson then took the children to Tiffany's parents' house and shot his father-in-law dead. He subsequently invaded a nearby home, taking the owner hostage and barricading himself inside. After a tense 7-hour standoff, Ferguson was apprehended by the authorities. During his court appearance, his lack of remorse and indifferent demeanor left everyone astounded. At his sentencing, Tiffany's best friend delivered a poignant victim impact statement.
I knew one day he would kill her. She would always reply, "He loves his kids too much. He won't kill me. He loved them so much, he murdered their mother and grandfather."
When questioned about his children, Ferguson expressed no desire to ever see or communicate with them again. The judge, addressing Ferguson, remarked that while he might not fit the clinical definition of insanity, there was undeniably something profoundly amiss with him.
May not meet the clinical definition of insanity, but there's clearly something fundamentally wrong with you.
Ultimately, Ferguson was sentenced to life in prison without the possibility of parole.
y'all in hell.
Christopher McNabb and Courtney Bell. One fateful Tuesday in May 2019, the jury convicted both Christopher McNabb and Courtney Bell of the murder of their 2-week-old daughter Kalia in 2017. It was believed that Bell murdered his 15-day-old baby while high on meth and then dumped her body in a bag. Baby Kalia was just 15 days old when she died in October 2017, and she had only just come home from the hospital a few days prior. Courtney Bell called 911 on that fateful morning, and distraught, she told the dispatcher that Kalia's dad, Christopher, had gone to check on her in her crib and had discovered the baby was missing. She claimed that Kalia went missing after being put back to bed following a 5 a.m. feeding in their home at Eagle Point Trailer Park in Covington, around 40 miles southeast of Atlanta. Police were suspicious after her 911 call, in which she claimed to have fallen asleep on the sofa when the child went missing and launched a hunt for the baby.
I lit in all these garbage cans. You shouldn't have to go to a garbage can to find a baby. And I know this is crazy, but I mean, it's just crazy to think someone came in this house in the middle of the night and took her, just not knowing. I'm not gonna be able to go to bed tonight. I can't eat. I'm trying to take care of my kids and my mind's wrapped around what happened. Could this happen? Did this happen?
This part is going to break your heart. Kalia had a 2-year-old sister who kept on yelling, "Sissy is gone, Sissy is gone." Little Kalia's body was found the following day in a wooded area adjacent to their home at Eagle Point Trailer Park. A team of volunteers found the poor baby in a gym bag under a log. The plot twist? The bag was her father's and even contained his clothes. When hearing that the baby's body had been discovered, McNabb jumped out of his girlfriend's car at an intersection and ran away. Cops then tracked him down at a gas station car wash, where they arrested him immediately on a probation violation. McNabb was charged with 8 counts, including the commission of felony murder, aggravated battery, covering up a death, and murder with malice. Nearly 3 months after Kalia was reported missing, a grand jury indicted Bell on charges of second-degree murder, cruelty to children, and deprivation of a minor. Both protested their innocence, claiming someone came into their mobile home and took the baby. Bell claimed that she loved her babies and tried to be a good mother, but was told by Judge John Ott she chose meth and McNabb over protecting her daughter.
I'm sorry, but for you to go around chasing McNabb, doing meth, flies in the face of what any normal mother would do.
McNabb's defense attorney said that his facial tattoos and history of domestic violence encouraged detectives to cut corners and focus on him as the murderer.
Since I'm pretty sure by the law states that I have a right to confront my witnesses who accuse me of doing wrong, so I felt like I wanted to say it in front of her since she was the one up here slandering me. And that's all I got to say.
A jury took about an hour to find both guilty of all charges. McNabb received a life sentence without the possibility of parole, plus 10 years to be served concurrently by Judge Ott.
On the crime of malice murder, I sentence you to life in confinement without parole. On concealing the death of another, I sentence you to 10 years in confinement consecutive or after. Count 1. Do you understand each of your sentences?
Yes, sir.
Bell was sentenced to 30 years in jail, with 15 years to serve and an additional 10 years to run consecutively. The two both broke down in tears after they were sentenced, claiming they were innocent. But it was way too late. What do you think? Was it indeed the meth or something else that brought about this tragic tale? Damon Kemp was charged with the double murder of his roommates in Daytona Beach, Florida. Police were called to investigate a reported burglary at an apartment complex where Kemp allegedly confessed to the murders. He had been staying with his 2 roommates when both were fatally shot multiple times inside the apartment. During Kemp's bond hearing, he was wheeled into court in a wheelchair. The defendant yelled various times, apparently screaming out, "God!" The judge tried to get Kemp's attention but was ignored entirely.
Damon Kemp, you're going to conduct your first appearance.
The hearing got so difficult for the victims' families that they had to leave the courtroom. Kemp is currently held in Volusia County Jail awaiting trial for the murders. The facts indicate he lived with the victims as roommates when they were killed inside their shared apartment. Kemp allegedly confessed when police initially responded to the scene for a suspected burglary. His disregard for the court proceedings shows a lack of remorse. Kemp seemingly has no comprehension of the gravity of the situation based on his dismissive conduct before the judge, and he was shouting God repeatedly. He was convicted of 2 counts of second-degree murder and burglary of an occupied dwelling with assault or battery. He was sentenced to 3 life terms in prison. In Los Angeles County Superior Court, Brandon Spencer stood accused of 4 counts of attempted murder. "I'm sorry for what happened, Your Honor, but I can't do life in prison," he said. The 19-year-old was at a packed party on the University of Southern California's campus on a fateful Halloween night. The celebrations were abruptly disrupted as gunshots rang out. Panic swept over the crowd, with people scattering in all directions, with some seeking shelter and others paralyzed in fear. Spencer reportedly fled the scene but was apprehended by LAPD officers in a parking lot a short distance away.
The minimum period of parole eligibility is 15 years plus 25 years to life in accordance with Penal Code Section 12022.53D. This is to be concurrent with the principal terms.
Prosecutors stated that Spencer's actions weren't random, but resulted from an ongoing personal issue with a rival gang member. They painted a picture of Spencer as a known gang affiliate, emphasizing the gravity of firing into a crowd. "I am not a bad person, but I made mistakes," said Spencer, maintaining his innocence throughout the trial. A jury of 9 women and 3 men took just under 3 hours to deliver a verdict against Brandon Spencer. Meanwhile, the defense posited it was a case of mistaken identity. Spencer's father also claimed that the rapid prosecution was driven by the University of Southern California and its sponsors. On the day of sentencing, the courtroom was filled with nearly 50 of Spencer's family and friends. Emotions ran high. As the verdict was announced, sheriff deputies had to intervene to restrain Spencer, who showed his distress by striking his head against the defense table. The court handed down a sentence of 40 years to life for his actions that night. This is Martisi Fuller on trial in Kenosha County, Wisconsin. After their relationship ended a few months earlier, Fuller took Juga's life. Prosecutors believe Fuller blamed Juga for his school expulsion and his exclusion from the football team. Quietly entering through the garage, he ambushed her inside her own home and shot her. Confronted by Juga's mother emerging from her room, Fuller shoots her twice. Fuller pleaded not guilty, but the jurors disagreed. They found the defendant guilty of first-degree intentional homicide. "My daughter is gone."
I heard a shot. I stopped in my doorway, and I looked at him and I said, "Oh my God, Martise." I said, "Please, you don't have to do this." And he looked at me and he said, "Yes, I do."
After the jury found Fuller guilty on 3 counts, he showed what appeared to be emotion for the first time on trial and cried. During Fuller's sentencing, he mentioned that he was innocent, and moments before he was sent to prison for the rest of his life, he put together a statement for the courtroom. Fuller prepared a report that he asked that I read on behalf of Martise and wrote,
"I wanted to write this giving my sincerest apologies to this family I once shared time and love with. Truthfully, I am sorry about the pain you've all suffered through, but more importantly, the loss of my ex-girlfriend Kaylee that I loved too. But I have to continue to stand innocent because I am. And I hope you all can eventually see in your hearts that I am not the person the media has made me out to be."
Now, the judge will deliver the sentence.
You are a very dangerous and a damaged human being. You have the soul that God gave each one of us, but it seems it is not bent toward compassion, kindness, or remorse.
The court orders that on count 1, you are sentenced to life in prison without eligibility for extended supervision. As the judge handed down a life sentence to Fuller, he displayed an astonishing calm, appearing entirely unshaken by the gravity of the decision. That was it for today. If you found these cases as fascinating as they are chilling, don't forget to hit that like button and subscribe for more true crime content. We're always on the lookout for the next topic to share. So drop a comment below and let us know what kind of stories you'd like to see in the future. Until then, stay curious, stay safe, and we'll see you in the next video.